So Gauss Prime has arrived and I have not made a proper guide on him before. Remember, the Prime version is the same as the base, just with a bit of extra stats like health and energy. So this is a Gauss and a Gauss Prime video in one. Gauss is the other speedy boy of Warframe, the more satisfying one. He just works. Ever since I played him, I've always said Gauss's kit just works, and he's a very fun frame for any turner looking for a fast-paced playstyle. He is an amazing weapons platform with decent defenses, and he can nuke with his second ability. Before we go into the video, Nova has released a video on Gauss going over some really unique hidden secrets about Gauss, so go and check that out. Where to get Gauss? You can farm him in Kappa Sedna, which is a disruption mission. A little bit of a tedious farm for those of you who don't do this game mode often, but I like to say to ease the pain, just think of it as a relic farm and you will get him in no time. With the release of Gauss Prime, his new relics will be released into rotation, which you can get from relic packs. You can get Lith relics from Hepit, Meso and Neo relics from Uko, and then you can go to Kappa Sedna for Axie and Neo relics, which is ironic because you're farming base Gauss and Gauss Prime through the same mission. Moving on to his abilities. Gauss's passive is a very important part of his kit and how it all comes together, so I'm going to take some time to explain this passive so it makes sense when I explain the abilities. Gauss has quite a unique passive. He has a battery which charges up with movement. The more this battery gets charged, the faster his shields regen, and the recharge delay is reduced up to 80%, meaning his shields will be up way more when it is fully charged. Now take careful note of this. His fourth ability, Redline, which I will talk about many times in this video, allows the battery to reach 100%. Without his fourth ability, Gauss only has access to 80% of the battery. So his fourth just gives it that extra juice. Please keep this in mind when I explain his abilities, as his entire kit is determined by his passive, which is his battery, and his fourth ability, Redline, allowing you to go to 100%. However, this battery drains or increases as you cast your abilities. For example, every time you press his 1, your battery increases by 10%. Here is a screenshot from the wiki. You can pause this video and have a look. I can't confirm if this is 100% accurate. And this battery also will affect how potent your abilities are, which we will go over in a second. So all in all, passive plays an important role in how strong his abilities are. His first ability, Mark Rush, I can't say the word. Yeah, anyway. This ability is what makes him speedy. As the name would suggest, he bursts into hypersprint, knocking over enemies and charging his battery. You can either tap this ability to yank him forward, or you can continuously hold it to sprint in hyperspeed. Every time you tap his 1, you get 10% battery, so it's a good way to quickly stack up your passive. You can even just run into a wall the whole time while tapping your 1 to charge it before you continue on in your mission. If you slam into an object while you activate this ability, it creates a shockwave. A cool thing about his ability is you can run across water on the plains of Eidolon or Old Valis. Just some cool useless info for you. His first ability will scale with sprint speed and movement speed. If you hold down his 1, it will drain 12.5 energy per second at base before you add or reduce duration. The augment for his 1 is called Mach Crash, which on the impact shockwaves, meaning when you slam into objects, will create a vacuum that sucks enemies in. Personally, I don't like it. You have to rely on objects to pull enemies in, and with the current Nautilus meta plus Helmut pull abilities, I don't see the need to waste a mod slot for this. His second ability is called Kinetic Plating. This is what keeps Gauss alive. As you can see here, this is the first of his abilities which has a percentage range depending on his passive. Create an armor plating around you that makes you immune to impact, puncture, slash, cold, heat, and blast, as well as knockdown or stagger. Kinetic plating drains your passive every time you get hit. If your battery is at its lowest, kinetic plating will reduce your incoming damage by 20%. But if you have Redline active and your battery is at 100%, you will get 100% damage reduction, meaning you are effectively immune to damage except for the status effects that I didn't mention earlier, like toxin, radiation, magnetic, and viral. Kinetic plating also helps with energy regen. You absorb a portion of the damage received from the types that you are immune to, and that will be converted into energy. If you wanted to make him even tankier and not rely on the battery being above 80% permanently, pairing adaptation with Gauss works really well to deal with the status effects that you aren't immune to, and just damage reduction in general. Kinetic plating also grants you 100% melee damage and 100% chance to stagger on hit when Redline, his fourth ability, is active. This ability scales well with duration. Stacking strength will only increase the base damage reduction that you get, not the maximum amount. Now we move on to his third ability, Thermal Sunder. This is his bread and butter. Basically, clap your hands together, create a ring by tapping the ability or holding the ability that applies either cold or heat. The rings that you create when activating this ability will slowly converge. Tap inflicts cold, hold inflicts heat. You can revert this in your settings if you'd like. Now this is quite the complex ability and it has so many synergies, so try to stick with me here. I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible. When you tap it and apply cold, you will charge your battery by 10%, inflicting a cold proc on all enemies within range. If you cast it a second time in the range, it will then freeze enemies for the duration of the cold proc. And if you keep recasting it, you can reset the timer, basically permanently freezing enemies. However, if your passive is maxed with Redline, his fourth ability, you can then insta-freeze him by casting cold once. Then you can hold this ability to apply heat procs. This will reduce your battery by 10%. The higher your battery charge, the more damage your heat procs will do. But if your battery is in Redline, your heat damage is doubled. If you recast heat on enemies, Thermal Sunder will deal its normal damage plus the damage of the current heat proc. So it scales infinitely. Every time you cast it, it just keeps doubling. If you cast cold and heat, it will combine together and make blast, but it will apply whatever element you casted last on top of the blast proc. So let's say you cast cold, then heat, you will apply blast, and then a heat proc will stay because you casted heat last. But the blast proc will actually permanently armor strip enemies based on the level of battery you have. So if you have 100% battery, you will get 100% armor strip. Gauss can create 4 rings of each element, effectively having up to 8 rings at one time. Thermal Sunder has an augment called Thermal Transfer, which gives you and your allies 75% of the bonus elemental damage, which means you get extra cold and heat damage. This augment is really only used in niche cases like arbitration meta squads. Now let's talk about his fourth ability. This is the ability that I kept referring to the whole time. Think of it as overclocking your computer. Your PC only runs at, let's say, 80%. Now you overclock it to run at 100%. In short, Redline pushes your battery limit from 80 to 100%, basically giving you maximum power. It supercharges all of your abilities and gives you fire rate, attack speed, reload speed, and casting speed. This single ability makes Gauss the amazing weapons platform he is. However, it's important to note scaling for Redline to get to 100% scales inversely, meaning the more duration you have, the slower it'll take to get to 100%. It will be 1/3 of the duration of Redline. So let's say you have less duration and press 4. You run around keeping the bar at max percentage, it will scale a lot faster. Whereas if you had a longer duration on the ability, this scaling will be slower because it's 1/3 of the total duration of the ability. Want to know what his 4 does? Here is your very own A10 Warthog. I mean Burst on Prime incarnate. Yep. So everything about Gauss's kit just works together and loops back to his 4th ability. Before we go into how we build Gauss, I want to talk about the synergies and mechanics with his abilities. So I've dumped all this info, but I want to quickly explain his battery a bit more and his 4th ability. Without anything casted, your battery will sit here by the small red line. If I cast heat from Thermal Sunder, it will drop the bar a bit. If I cast cold or cast his first ability or sprint, it will start to charge the bar. So before I activate his 4th ability, if I, let's say, spam his Thermal Sunder for heat, dropping the bar down to pretty much nothing, you will deal less and less damage. Or your damage reduction from your second ability will be lower as I lower the battery. But here is the interesting thing. If you cast your 4th, this will allow you to go over that small red line, and you will see 0%. Now it will start to passively drain. So as you start moving, casting, meleeing, whatever it is you choose to do, it will go over that red line and you will see the percentage start to increase. Your goal is to get to 100% as fast as possible because it locks. When it locks, this effectively means you can keep recasting Thermal Sunder for heat over and over again and it will not drain. It locks there, it stays there. This applies for the damage reduction, this applies for the armor stripping when you apply blast, everything. This will stay at 100% until the duration of Redline runs out. Getting hit or anything like that will not reduce your battery's percentage. Now when you stack it to 100%, cast heat multiple times, then cast cold, well, you get damage like this. This is very important to keep in mind with him. This allows us to make some pretty cool synergies and builds with him. Another thing is pairing Archon Vitality with his heat from Thermal Sunder. It will increase your damage drastically, effectively doubling it even more, on top of the bonus double heat proc damage with maxed Redline. Nova told me this, by the way. So let's move on to actually building him. Here is the dilemma. Gauss is pretty much a perfect frame with his base kit. I find it really hard to justify subsuming his abilities except for one in particular, which I will go over very soon. He is an amazing weapons platform while being a nuke. Because of this, we need to focus on two stats, duration and range. A little bit of strength too, but I feel duration and range are most important. One more thing I want to add is because of his passive giving you insane shield recharge, using fast deflection with him will honestly make him close to unkillable, as you will have really high shield regen and low recharge delay. This is entirely up to you for all the builds here, whether it's the baby tenor build or the endgame build. For the baby tenors, if you feel like you're dying because you don't have adaptation, I would highly suggest adding it to the builds. For the baby tenors getting Gauss or Gauss Prime, something like this will work. Use whatever aura you have available. Your duration won't match mine as I have 2 duration shards on him. This is for the super budget build. If you feel your energy is still suffering, as Gauss kinda has an energy problem when you're spamming Thermal Sunder, use the new Energy Nexus mod from Whispers in the Walls. If you don't have access to that, I would suggest buying this mod. It's pretty cheap on the market. Moving on to the mid-game players, for those of you who are late into Starshot, just reaching Steel Path, this is also a budget build for you. Use any arcanes you have available. Then we move on to the general Steel Path build. This is for the later game players. Here we focus on range, duration, and a bit of strength. You have 2 options here. Go for Mods Augmented and get more strength, scaling the damage of your Thermal Sunder, or switching it out for something else like Arcane Energized, or any other arcane you want. Archon Vitality is going to boost your heat damage from Thermal Sunder drastically. You can change up this build to your liking and playstyle. Remember, if you're struggling with energy sustain, use Equilibrium, and if you're using a companion, equip the Hellstrom with Synth Deconstruct, and if it's a pet, just normal Synth Deconstruct will work, of course. Now, let's move on to, hands down, my favorite build in Warframe. It never gets old. Now this is contradictory to what I said, where Thermal Sunder is his bread and butter, but this playstyle is dropping Thermal Sunder and purely focusing on weapons. This is the Energized Munitions Gauss. Yeah, my favorite build. In all honesty, this is the only Gauss build that I really play. Energized Munitions, for those of you who don't know, gives you 75% ammo efficiency. So weapons that have big magazine capacities, well, it's even bigger. The Kuva Brammer got a hard nerf, right? Yeah, not with Energized Munitions. Tarnkor's only 1 bullet, right? Now you got 4 to 5. Phantasma Prime, Cedo, Felox, you get the idea here. Now, because Gauss synergizes really well with duration, because his 4th ability scales with duration, well, you can see why it works. Subsume Energized Munitions on your 3rd and just stack pure duration, because Energized Munitions has a very low base duration and low scaling as well. With the setup, we have 341% duration with 2 shards, and it's only 17 seconds. We can go one step further here. If you get your hands on the Grimoire, you can get an extra 60% with 2 shards, and if you run Molt Efficiency, which adds 36%, plus 60% from the Grimoire, giving us a 437% duration. Because you don't have Thermal Sunder, you don't need strength nor range. If you feel like you are struggling with energy, swap out the flexible Arcane Eruption for Energize, or drop Augur Message for Streamline. And that's pretty much it for this build. Pick any weapon you like and have fun with the insane amount of fire rates. When it comes to other subsumes, it's honestly up to you. Nourish over his 1 if you don't need the speed or any other ability, Zarta for damage buffing, Raw, and so on. The only thing is you need to have his 2 and his 4. They are the most important abilities with Gauss. Archon Shards. Gauss gets casting speed from his 4th, so it's entirely up to you here if you want more. Honestly, the best thing for him is just duration shards. My final thoughts on Gauss, well, he's the perfect frame in my opinion. Gauss is simplistic, but extremely complex at the same time. He's the perfect frame for speeding through missions, especially if you enjoy the faster playstyle. Sometimes he does struggle with energy depending on how you build him, but nothing like Equilibrium and Synth Deconstruct can't fix. He's a great weapons platform. He's worth the grind for normal and now the Prime version as well. He deals a stupid amount of damage when it comes to Thermal Sunder, so stacking more range wouldn't be a bad idea. And if you want to, you can stack a whole bunch of strength, that works too. I don't have much more to say. He's just super fun. Energized Munitions Gauss is a godly build. My favorite, I highly recommend trying it out. I hope you guys enjoy Gauss Prime. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. A huge thank you to all of our channel members who help me pay the bills. Thank you. I'll see you all in the next one.